You've done some incredible things in your life, but it all kind of has to start somewhere.
And we're thinking, why hasn't someone done this before? Are we missing something? Because this seems like an obvious solution to a big problem.
We should absolutely be encouraging businesses to take on the world, but why can't they take on the world from Australia?
We've essentially gone viral because of a virus. We saw daily sales double one day and then 12x the day after that.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to People Building Businesses, the podcast where we try to uncover the secrets behind the founders, CEOs, and entrepreneurs and business leaders that make their company special. And, today we have an amazing guest, Grace Watkins, who's the founder and CEO of Click Management. Click manages some of the world's biggest online gaming personalities, and collectively her team of content creators have amassed over 700 million views across the various different platforms. Incredible success story here. And, I'm looking forward to chatting with Grace. So Grace, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much. That's a really nice intro. Thank you.
No
I think that number is off though, actually.
Ooh.
I feel as though it's probably 700 million a month at the moment.
Oh my gosh. That's even more impressive. That's crazy. And,
Yeah.
I know that you've got some of your personalities who've got, tens of millions of subscribers on
Yeah.
YouTube alone, let alone Twitch and the others. So
Yeah.
that's actually incredible.
It's a crazy world.
Yeah. So before we jump into Click, I want to understand, Grace, the human being, the person. So maybe a good place to start is, could you tell us a bit about your upbringing, where you grew up and your early
sure.
days, I guess?
Yeah, sure. So I was born in Sydney, but really grew up in Melbourne, actually. So it's really nice to be back in Melbourne today because I now live back in Sydney. But yeah, I grew up in the eastern suburbs. I'm the eldest of four, and I think had an amazing upbringing. Really, it was a lot of fun. I'm very close with my siblings, which is nice because we all work together now.
That's
basically. Awesome. But yeah, I think I went to school. I was pretty ambitious at school, I would say, for the most part. Like, definitely had a desire to do well. And I think even though I wasn't really sure, even finishing school, what exactly I wanted to do, I was always trying to think about trying to keep as many doors open as possible. And that was good advice from my parents, probably, who just said, don't pigeonhole yourself too much and try and do hard things and do things that will open opportunities for you, and just try and learn a lot and take on different, internships or work experience or whatever. So I feel like a lot of my late teens and early 20s was that. And I think it was really good. And even though, I studied accounting and law at university, which is not at all really what I'm doing now, I feel like it was such a good foundation of learning and, keeping in that mindset of just trying to keep as many doors open and explore different things and see if you're interested in something and meet lots of people was probably, a really, really good place to start.
Did you ever envision yourself being a founder and an entrepreneur when you were growing up and studying?
No, not at all, actually. And I would say until Click, I actually had very few aspirations to ever start my own business. I was working at PwC and I was really happy there. I actually loved my experience at PwC, and my mum works in the corporate world. And so I think I really looked to her, and I really admire her and the career that she's had. And so I thought that was sort of what I wanted to follow as well. And I was quite attracted actually to the idea of working in a big company where I felt as though you would have a lot of support and structure around you and the ability to, work with people that are older and smarter than you, which is true. And I think they were, climbing the corporate ladder probably was really more the aspirations that I had. I think, it is funny though. I think back on my year 10 work experience, which I did at Just Group, which is the group that owned Just Jeans and Portman's and Peter Alexander and that sort of
Huge
thing.
portfolio of brands.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I did my work experience there, and I actually don't even remember what day it was or what area of the business that I was working in, but I remember seeing this woman who seemed much older and more mature and, really seemed to have her life together, and she was dressed really well. And I think I looked at her and I was just like, wow, what are you doing? She seemed to just sort of come and go from the office and have meetings, and opened up her laptop and was on calls and sort of was really dictating her own schedule. And I actually have no idea who she was or what her role was.
She just looked important.
But I was like, that looks like a really cool job. And I think having that, I was quite attracted to the idea of working on different projects and having autonomy in what you were doing, and that sort of thing. And I think, now if I think back to that as an aspiration for some sort of what I would have wanted my work to look like, I feel like I actually have a lot of that right now. So I don't know how it all came together, but I'm happy with where it's
it's a pretty interesting transition from accounting and law, which are very traditional career paths, to, starting Click, which is completely left field. And, it's such a growing industry and not many people know what's actually involved in it. So it sounds like it's an interesting transition. Yeah,
it is an interesting transition. I think even though I loved PwC and I loved the work, I felt as though I was also a bit bound to the structure of what working in a big business felt like. And I think PwC, it's a strength that it has so much structure around it. But I also felt as though I was quite hungry to do a lot. And I felt as though that structure around, okay, you come in as a grad and you're a grad for 2 years and this is what you earn, and then you're a senior for 2 years and this is what you earn.
Right.
I felt as though even if I tried really, really hard, there was no ladders that you could take. There was no shortcuts. There was no ability to go above and beyond and do more and accelerate faster. And I think that was probably when the early ideas of what would it be like to, at that point, just start a side hustle and do something on the side that, was challenging my brain in a different way. It wasn't even about, trying to earn any additional money, because I actually didn't even think that was realistic at the point.
Right.
I think it was more just about having a hobby in a way, or something that I could really go home from work and think about and feel as though I was growing it and able to feel the reward from that. So I feel like that's probably where the idea sparked. And then obviously when we started Click,
So Click was initially a side hustle for you. It wasn't a...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was a side hustle for me and my co-founders. So it really was something that I actually thought was just going to look good on my resume when I went to try and get a consulting job after PwC. I thought, that'll show some entrepreneurship and,
awesome.
The ability to want to do a little bit more than just what's right in front of you. So that was actually what I thought. I was like, this will look good on my resume for whatever I want to do in the corporate world next. And it'll be a fun challenge and that sort of thing. And obviously that's not how it panned out, which is for the best, obviously. But I think it's quite funny looking back on that now. But yeah, it was absolutely just a side hustle, and then it quickly became something I was super passionate about.
So what were the early days like? Because PwC and accounting firms in general, Big Four, are very known to have long, demanding hours, and you were still running your own company on the side. So it must have been pretty hectic for you in those early days.
It was. Credit to PwC, they were wildly supportive of what I was doing. And we started Click probably in about April, May of 2017, I think. And so I was still working full time, and I was just doing it on the weekends or at night and thinking about it and that sort of thing. And then in about October, I realized there was a program at PwC that allowed you to take 3 months off work, and PwC would support that if you had a project that was geared towards personal development or something. And I think most people probably took it as an excuse to go on a Euro trip and that sort of thing. Or someone got their plane license, which is way cooler. But anyway, I was like, I want to take 3 months off and work on my little business and see if I can make it happen. And so I had that opportunity, and then I took that 3 months, and that was really essential to getting, Click to a point where I felt as though, maybe this could actually be a real thing. And then I came back, and PwC actually supported me to work part-time. So obviously a lot of the work that I was doing was very client-based. I was working in audit. So I was able to just take on a couple of clients that I had been working on for the last year or two, and was able to work on Click beyond that, and then did that for 6 months. And then it was finally at a point where I felt like I could make the leap 100%. But I think that's something, people... it's interesting. Sometimes I'll speak to people and they'll be like, "Oh, that's so brave to quit your job and do your own thing. And I think at the time it really didn't feel that way. And on reflection, I was probably pretty measured about it. Like I'm actually not a super like risk-taking personality. I think I was very, very sure that the business would be able to sustain me leaving my full-time job before I actually did it.
Yeah. I mean, what happened when you gave your notice to PwC? Were they supportive?
I was so nervous. Oh my gosh, I was so nervous. I was actually on a work trip in Austin for a client that I had at the time, and my partner, who I just respected so much, was the person that I was going to tell first. And I remember like being in the hotel room, looking at myself in the mirror, being like, "You can do it. You can do it.
You gotta hype yourself up."
Trying to rehearse like what I was going to say. I was so nervous.
Yep.
And anyway, I told him, and he was incredibly supportive. And I think even though a lot of people at PwC probably didn't understand what I was doing at the time, or thought maybe it was a little bit niche or weird, I think they were so supportive. And, you know, he was like, the door's always open. And so I felt very, I still actually feel incredibly supported by the PwC network. And, you know, a few people, number of partners and that sort of thing reach out periodically. And I think that's a great thing actually about being at a Big Four, is that they're so good with relationships and past employees and potential clients and that sort of thing.
That's an incredible story, Grace.
Yeah.
Wow. So where did the initial spark for the idea come from to start Click? What inspired you to do that?
Oh, that was 100% Elliot, my brother.
Okay.
So Elliot is my brother and co-founder, and then we have Emma, our other co-founder. And Elliot is a gamer himself. So he's been a gamer since he was a kid. And, you know, as children, it would cause us many, many fights when we were teenagers, because I really wasn't a gamer. I'm still not a great gamer. I think I can, you know, I can talk the talk a lot now. I'm still not very good at walking the walk, but, he was at university. He was a couple of years younger than me. He was also studying commerce law, and he started to upload these little tutorial videos because he was particularly good at this one game. He would upload these little tutorials. There was no speaking. It was like you couldn't see him. It was just literally him doing this thing in game. And he started to develop a little bit of a community, and he was quite good at it. And people would say, "Oh, can you show me how to do this thing or this thing?" And so he started to make more YouTube videos, and he watched a lot of YouTube at the time. He knew it was a potential job that people did, but it probably felt quite out of reach. But he started to go for it while he was at university and developed an audience quite quickly, and then started to not go to class as much so that he was making videos instead. And it's funny, he was at ANU, and ANU has amazing internet, unlike a lot of Australia. And so he was going to college. He was at college, but he wasn't going to any class. He like deferred his classes, but still tried to go to college so he'd be able to access the really good internet in Canberra to make videos. And then the college quickly caught on. They were like, "Dude, you can't be here." They're like, "You can't just stay here and not go to university." So he moved up to Sydney and really worked on that, and was able to make it a full-time job probably within about 6 months, much to our parents' confusion and probable disappointment at the time. And he had a manager who was Emma, our third business partner.
Right.
And she'd come more from like a music management background. She was managing Troye Sivan, who's like an ARIA award-winning singer, and collaborated with Ariana Grande. And, you know, so he was like, "Hey, more of my friends need management." And she didn't have the capacity to take it on in an individual sense. So we started Click, and that was really what it was. We were just like, let's represent some gamers and see if we can help them build their careers, and talk with a lot of brands and that sort of thing, and articulate how strong we think this genre of entertainment is. And that was it.
That's awesome. I actually am a fan of your brother's videos as well, music, and you know, I used to watch his Team Fortress videos back in the day as well. That's
TF2,
what really,
that was what it was. Yeah,
that's what blew him up, right?
Yeah,
like that's,
totally.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, like incredible story as well.
Yeah.
It sounds like a pretty amazing family of overachievers that you have over there.
I don't know. It also in hindsight, it was just taking one step in front of the other.
Yeah.
I think I think that's something that I don't know if people think that there was some grand plan that we've just been executing for the last few years, but there absolutely wasn't. It really wasn't. Like,
so there was no family master plan where, you know, one something does this and the
gosh.
other, and, you know.
No. Even with the business though, you know, I think there's this whole, there's a lot of pressure, I think, when you start a business people say like, oh, what's the 5-year plan? What's the 3-year plan? Like what's your exit strategy? What are you going to be doing? What's your revenue going to look like in 2 or 3 years? And honestly, we had no idea. We didn't have a business plan. I think we tried to make a business plan. It was like a template that we downloaded off Google because that's what we thought was the right thing to do.
Right.
But if I was to look back on that now, like the business we have now is actually nothing like what we would have thought it would have been 3 or 4 years ago. And it's in many ways so much better than that. But I think especially when you're in a rapidly growing industry that's developing in different ways, I think if we had a business plan that we were laser focused on from day one,
Right.
we would have potentially missed some of the incredible opportunities that we've been able to jump on that were just like little shiny things in the peripheral, you know?
Yep.
So I think in some ways not having a super rigid business plan that we felt like we had to stick to meant that we were able to be quite flexible and jump on different opportunities as they arose.
Yeah. So I mean, what actually is involved in managing these content creators and representing them? Because not a lot of people have insight into what actually goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to traditional entertainment industries like musicians or movie stars or TV stars or whatever. But I think, there is a lot of really talented content creators out there at the moment. And they're making content on YouTube or Twitch or Instagram or wherever. But there's quite a bit of strategy that goes into actually thinking about how you can make that a long-term career and how do you, deepen and diversify your revenue streams? How do you think about positioning yourself and marketing yourself? How do you think about the kind of brands that you want to collaborate with? And then within that, the brokering, negotiating, sourcing of deals that is a really significant revenue stream for a lot of creators out there. There's a huge amount that goes into that. And then a lot of the work that we do is pitching to different brands and agencies and that sort of thing and articulating why they should be interested in gaming, because I think gaming, and this is a strength that actually I feel like has been good for me not coming from a gaming background, is I think being able to articulate why gaming is so special and valuable to a non-gaming audience. Because
Right.
I think when we talk to a lot of brands, they're like, gaming, I just don't know. Like I've heard the word Fortnite before, like
Yeah.
Call of Duty. Like I know my like little teenage brother is like sitting in his room in the dark, like playing a game. But like, what is that? Like, what's the difference between a console and a PC and mobile gaming? And, it can feel quite like there's a high barrier to entry to understanding how to penetrate that market. And I think what one of my goals with Click has been is to make that feel easier and make it feel approachable and allow people to understand how they can, get into the industry in a way that adds a lot of value for them, but doesn't feel crazy difficult.
Awesome. So Grace, can you tell me a bit more about your experience being a CEO of a company? What is it like being, the leader of the ship? It's
been absolutely like the biggest learning experience of my life. It's hard to actually even think about formulating an answer to that question because in many ways, actually I was thinking the other day, I was like, in some ways I feel as though we've had 3 companies in the last 4 years. And it's interesting because I was saying that I think a lot of people, when you first start a business, they're like, when you first start a business, that's the hardest. It's so tough and you're trying to make it work and you're working the longest hours and that sort of thing. And I actually disagree, or it was a different experience for us. I feel like when we started Click, it was so fun. And maybe because we were in a really lucky position where we were able to keep our full-time jobs so we weren't financially dependent on it, or, I didn't have a mortgage or kids or whatever. So, it didn't have that pressure from the get-go. But I feel like when we started, it was just so much fun. Like everything was new and such a net positive to the experience that I'd had up until that point. And, we were going to meetings and like there wasn't, it felt as though because it was so new, there was nowhere to fall, it was just like everything was a plus.
Yeah.
And I remember the first trip that we did with my business partner to LA. We were there and we were like sitting by a pool, like having a cocktail at like 3:00 in the afternoon.
Sounds pretty
We'd like
awesome.
finished our meetings for the day. And I was just like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
This is the most fun thing I've ever done. I was like, Click could end tomorrow. And I'd be like, what a fun experience
Wow.
this was. So I feel like that was the first year. And, I was still working a full-time job. And so I feel as though that period where it was just new and exciting and like there was not very far to fall, and we didn't have 15 employees. So there wasn't this like huge pressure of providing like career progression and providing salaries and having a huge amount of clients that we were looking after. That didn't exist. So it was just, I was so passionate and excited about everything.
Yeah.
Then, as the business starts to grow and we had a few more employees and we had a few more clients, and you have to deal with implementing like systems and structure and that sort of thing, that's when it got tough. Like that's when it really got tough. And I think, for the first year and a half of our business, we were working above Elliot's garage, and there was like 5 or 6 of us in a room. And it was just a different business because it was so small. We all knew exactly what was going on. Everyone knew what everyone was doing. Communication was really easy. Everyone was in the same room. The processes were super basic because they didn't need to be complicated. And then we moved to a much bigger office, and we scaled up in terms of staff quite quickly, which meant we had to, really scale up other areas of the business quite quickly as well. And that period was actually quite challenging. It felt like a real teething period of the business, and it suddenly went from like 4 or 5 people to like 10 to 12 people, and there was a huge difference in that. And it was complicated. Like that was a different business for me to run. I'd never had that experience. I'd never managed that many people before. If you have 4 direct reports, that's really different to 12 direct reports. And for a lot of the staff as well, like they thought they were working in a business with 4 or 5 people that felt really small. And some of them, I think, actually struggled with the change of going to 10 to 12. And, we had quite a bit of turnover that year, and that was extremely stressful. And, you're still at a point with the business where it's quite young. When it's yours, you take everything so personally. Like I remember when our first employee quit, and it kept me up at night for weeks. I just took it so, I really, took it hard, and it was just trying to figure this thing out and feeling as though I was trying to juggle a million things at once and wasn't doing any of them particularly well. And it was tough. And it took a while to like get over that period of the business. And I think, I think that's something that like I try to talk about a lot quite publicly, is that it's not easy. Like starting a business and trying to grow it is not for the faint of heart. It requires a lot of like personal investment, and you have to be willing to like take on a high level of stress and sacrifice other things for it. And then, you come out of the dark as well. Like there are waves. It's a journey of waves. And I feel like that would be a way to sum up what the last 4 years has been like for me. There's been periods where you just feel like you're on an absolute high and everything's flowing and it's working so well. And then there are periods where you feel like you're really up against it and you're trying to figure this thing out and you're trying to like see ahead of you, but you've never been down that path before. So it's like quite foggy and
Yeah.
And then the third business I feel like is what we're in now. And honestly, it's amazing. We've got an incredible team. We've got a lot more processes. We've got some great people in the right places. And, I've probably figured out a little bit better how to be a leader as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's in a much, much better place. But I have no doubt that, this will be a phase. And at one point I'll feel like we're in a different business again. So, yeah.
What would you attribute as being, the prime driver of you being able to get from business 1 to business 2, and then from business 2 to business 3, and maybe even looking forward, business 3 to business 4? Like, what has helped you get through those different phases of your business?
That's a good question, because I feel as though at the time I wouldn't have recognized that it was such a step.
Yeah.
Even though in hindsight, moving office, although at the time it was like, oh, we're just moving office, and it was like a physical location, actually that change created a huge mindset shift for all of us and the business, which, you don't realize until after the fact. I think we have made an effort to feel as though, even though we haven't, as I said, haven't had this super structured business plan that we've been executing on, that we always feel as though we're iterating and improving. And I feel as though each major shift has also come with a shift in the business, whether that's having a new business area that we're working on, or taking on a new big contract, or hiring for a particular senior role. That's sort of when those shift points have happened. And I think as the shift points happen, they get easier with each one, and you get a little bit more confident that it's like, all right, we'll just take a step in this direction, and it's hopefully going to work, and we're just going to figure it out as we go. And I think figuring it out as we go has been a good motto for the last 4 years of my life.
Adapting to the different circumstances.
100%. Yeah. Because I think if something I feel like a lot of people talk about when they're starting a business, it's like, oh, it's not perfect yet. It's not perfect yet. It's like, if you waited until it's perfect, like, you're never going to ship it. You're never going to go for it. And honestly, I feel like so much of making things happen is just literally taking the steps. And you might not know exactly in what direction you're going or exactly if it's the right step, but it's just having that attitude of like, all right, we're like moving ahead, and we're just going to keep moving ahead and figuring it out as we go and learning as we go. And it's literally just having that bias to action, I think, that is such an important ingredient in growing something.
What I find interesting about Click is that, I literally don't know any other names of your competitors. I only know Click.
Yeah.
And, you've been profiled on the AFR recently, and we had a chat about this before the podcast. You seem to be getting a lot of coverage for what you're doing, and it seems like your offering has been quite unique in terms of what you provide your content creators. So what do you attribute to being that differentiator compared to your competitors out there? What's different about Click that makes you special compared to the others?
I think let me think about that for a second.
No worries. Yeah.
I think we were incredibly lucky to have my brother on board from day one. Yeah, it would be totally remiss to note that he was an absolutely essential ingredient, I think, in starting our business, and he was a trusted voice in the community. And therefore, when he said like, hey, these guys have really been able to help me, I think they'll be able to help you too. People were probably willing to take a chance on that. And I think I felt a sense of gratitude that people were willing to take a chance on me. And with that sense, felt a deep desire to impress people and not let them down when I feel as though they'd taken a chance on me. And I think having that sense of not wanting to let people down means that you're very hungry to make sure you're doing a good job all the time. And I think we really try to look to the US in terms of what they're doing. We don't really have any competitors in Australia. And I think, we were in a lucky position where we were able to develop quite a lot of market share quite early in the region. But I think we also play on a global playing field. Digital content, gaming, I feel so lucky that we can be an Australian business but actually not feel particularly limited by geographic borders at all.
Right.
Most of our audiences are actually in the US, and I try not to think about not having competitors in Australia. I don't really want to, I think that's a limiting thought process for me. And I think perhaps what people find interesting about the space or about Click is, especially in Australia, is we're part of this gaming industry, and I think gaming is absolutely massive. Like, revenues last year exceeded movies and music combined.
That's insane.
In gaming. And I think it's quite misunderstood. So people are curious about what does that actually look like. It's growing very rapidly. And so I think the combination of having an already very big industry that's growing very rapidly and looking in the Australian market about ways that people could, who are the players in that industry that are doing a good job, or what are the potential points that you're able to access that industry in Australia. There's probably not that many. And so maybe I think that's probably why people find Click interesting. And I also think it's it's just new media. I think it's really cool. It's like cool to see young people that are able to create these really incredible careers for themselves as talent. And you speak to young kids these days, like everyone wants to be a YouTuber, everyone wants to be a gamer.
Yeah.
It's a new job that people find really exciting. So yeah.
And how has COVID impacted your business? I mean, with people all locked at home, I'm guessing that was a big boon to your content creators as well that you're managing.
Yeah, it feels funny to say that it was like a silver lining, but our viewership really exploded over COVID.
Yeah.
And I think that there is an element of that was COVID, and that will probably, realign and readjust over the next few months. But I do think that there's also a trend to people making their homes their entertainment centers of their lives now. And there's an element of that won't change. I think people are going to movies less. They're going to live sport less. They're going to concerts less, definitely over the last year.
That's true.
And they're looking for more ways that they can make entertainment at home. And I think you see a lot of that. I think there's also this shift at the moment around content from where you were used to seeing a lot of very highly produced content. I think a lot of young people, especially now, are very drawn to like the rawness and realness of user-generated content. And that's why you're seeing like an explosion of sites, of viewership on sites like YouTube. And, TikTok has just completely exploded over the last year. And I think people are quite drawn, and perhaps through COVID, the fact that people were interacting less with other people, it was nice to interact with people digitally in a way that felt really raw and like a human connection.
That's awesome. I mean, it is such a big industry, and you're right, that not a lot of people know about it. And it seems like you're drawing from your past experience being a consultant in PwC as well to really be able to share the story of how this industry is growing. So for brands who want to work with Click and with the people you're representing, what's the return for them? If they were a traditional kind of company, how do they work with your content creators and you?
Yeah, I love working with brands. I love working with brands that haven't worked in gaming before. I think it's so exciting, and I think I'm just so passionate about gaming really growing as like a whole subculture now, similar to like how skateboarding is a subculture. It's not just about skateboarders, it's about like the brands that they're wearing and bands and the events and the content that's coming out of it and the personalities and the apparel that people are wearing and all that. Gaming is that, and it's that in an infancy form right now, even though it's already so big. I think for brands, it's really, for me, thinking about the end consumer of gaming content and that demographic. For us, it is very, very dominantly young men, like teenage boys, men in their 20s and 30s. And that is a really difficult demographic for traditional marketing to reach. For young people in general, I think everyone is very attuned to what marketing looks like, what ads look like. Like young people are online all the time. I think we have so many things being thrown in our face all the time that people are wanting you to buy. And as a result, I think young people have a really high bullshit radar, to be honest. I think like people know when they're being sold to.
Yeah.
And they are pretty attuned to what that looks like. I think what I get really excited about with the kind of advertising that we're doing is that it's not like that. In addition to that, I think a lot of young people, a lot of young men especially, have ad blockers on their computers. They're not even seeing ads. They're spending less time outside. They're not seeing out-of-home advertising. People are not watching TV in the same way that they used to, unless it's live sport or news. And so I think to be able to access this quite difficult to reach demographic in a way where they're actually actively looking for the content, like they're going on YouTube and they're clicking on these videos, like they're wanting to watch these streams, they're actively, wanting to consume it, is super powerful. And the fact that that's coming from these really big digital talent that have very trusted personalities, you get almost like a word of mouth effect, because the viewers of the talent that we represent, they are coming back for more every day. Like they're uploading content every day and their audience is coming back every day. And it's not just about the games that they're playing or the challenges that they're doing. It's like they know the music that they listen to when they're gaming. They know what clothes they're wearing. They know what food they're eating on stream. They know who their friends are and what they do outside of gaming. And I think that is where their audiences are really able to develop a very strong personal relationship with these people. And so it would be like, you know, if one of your friends said, hey, I'm like loving this game right now, you should play it. You would be like, oh, well, I already know that I love all the other games that he plays and I trust his opinion on every other aspect. So therefore, if he says I should buy something or try it, then I'm going to. You're going to have such way more chance. So I think that's where I get really excited about being able to help brands access those audiences. And then in terms of what that looks like, it can be so varied. And I think 4 years ago, we were working with a lot of endemic brands to the gaming space, like hardware companies or, you know, game publishers or laptop companies or whatever. Now there's a massive shift and we're working with a lot of like quick service restaurants like McDonald's or Hungry Jack's or KFC.
Oh, that's interesting, right?
We're working with, we did a campaign with Culture Kings last week for apparel. We're doing stuff with movies, music labels. It's so varied. And I think that's where I get really excited that there's such an appreciation now for what this content is and what it's able to access.
That's amazing. I mean, you mentioned previously that most of your viewership has been young males to date. Do you see that shifting with the rise of female gamers in an industry that has traditionally been male dominated?
I think it will. I think it will shift. Honestly, I think it's been slow to shift. I think it will shift as the definition of what gaming is becomes more and more broad. And now we work with a lot of talent that really straddle what it means to be gaming. It's like they're doing gaming, but they're also doing like makeup tutorials, or they're doing gaming, but they're also, reacting to different like funny videos online. And you care about it's about the friendship group and the challenges that they're doing more than it is about the game. Like the game is sort of just the medium for their own content.
Right. Okay.
So I think as that expands, hopefully so too will the demographic, but it is extremely male dominated right now. I think I see a lot of statistics online talking about how 50% of gamers are women. I think that can be quite skewed. I think it's like driving heavily from mobile games, which is different to what a lot of people would really see as like true gaming or the kind of content that's being consumed. But I would love to see more girls in the world. It is very male dominated right now, but I'm confident that, even if it's not from a talent perspective, there's so many other roles in the industry where people can get involved. And then from a viewership perspective, I think, hopefully that will continue to develop.
Yeah. Thanks, Grace. I mean, we just have a few more questions because we're running out of time here. It's been so great chatting with you so far.
Of course.
I want to touch on your podcasts. You're not new to the podcasting world. You actually have two of your own podcasts, Watch Time and also Rookie CEO. Could you just take us through those two podcasts and tell us more about it?
Yeah, I think it's been so fun. The podcast really started as a hobby and a way to sort of share some of the content that we were talking about organically between us anyway. Watch Time I do with my brother, Elliot, my brother and business partner. It's quite industry driven. We're talking about what's happening in gaming and pop culture and sort of breaking that down in a larger sense and what that means from a creative perspective and a business perspective. It's so fun. It's like, honestly, an insight into the conversations that we would be having in the office with everyone anyway. And then Rookie CEO is a really new little pet project. It's just a sort of real-time chronicle of the, highs and lows and challenges that I'm facing on a day-to-day basis as, a business owner trying to do it all and figure it out for the first time and the the crazy ride that comes with that.
I was listening to one of your episodes this morning, the one about how social media can be extremely overly positive, and there's this highlight reel, and it seems like you've got a really raw approach to that podcast, which is refreshing.
I feel like I would go on LinkedIn and it would be all these business owners like sharing their 5 top tips for whatever, and I would be like, really? Like, is it that simple? Because it wasn't for me. And it was like a messy process of trying to figure stuff out. Like you just... And I think I was so hard on myself, and like it was Rookie CEO was actually really born out of a time where we were I was going through it a bit. Like I was pretty burnt out and struggling, and I was like, far out, this is really tough. Like is anyone else finding it really tough? Yeah. And I felt as though I would go on LinkedIn or, Instagram or whatever, and it'd be this whole, like just glorified kind of like shiny perspective of what it was to be an entrepreneur or, have a startup or a side hustle. And it felt quite alienating, I think, to go through like real challenges.
Yeah.
And then I would actually speak to other business owners and they would be like, oh yeah, me too. Like 100% me too. But like, I feel as though when you're starting something out, when you have employees, there's this pressure to feel as though you have your shit together, so to speak, all the time, which you just don't. And so I think I hope that hopefully if someone listens to that and feels slightly less alone, that they're like trying to figure it out at the same time, that's totally normal.
And shout out to all the listeners out there. Available on Apple Podcasts,
yes,
Spotify,
yeah,
etc.
Anywhere you listen to podcasts. Yeah.
Awesome. Second last question for you before we wrap things up. We found out that you were, formerly a strategy director at Live Below the Line, and that you had raised, $2 million for education programs in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
Could you talk to us a bit about, that side of your life where you actually are, working on these projects?
Yeah. Wow. Live Below the Line. That was while I was at university. Yeah. I actually was really, really drawn to working in nonprofits throughout my university time. And I actually started working with an organization called the Hunger Project very early on in when I was 19 and traveled to Bangladesh with them. And they're an amazing organization that basically empowers people to lift themselves out of poverty. And so I did a huge amount of fundraising with them and traveled to Bangladesh and was able to see their programs working on the ground and was thought it was just really incredible. And they have a lot of really smart people working on that business, and then wanted to sort of be able to get involved in that in a bit of a deeper sense and develop, some good, hopefully, career skills as well, which I did with Live Below the Line. And that was awesome. That's like an organization, everyone's under 26. And it was so fun, like just working on a project like Live Below the Line, where everyone was sort of coming around this thing together. And yeah, it was an amazing time. Yeah.
Do you plan on doing more of that kind of stuff into the future?
Yeah, I think so. It's actually important for me, and certainly with the Hunger Project, that's been a long-term relationship for me. It started, when I was like 18 and fundraising and went to Bangladesh. And then I actually did a 3-month internship at their head office in New York a couple of years later. And it's been like an ongoing relationship with them, and one that, I hope I continue.
Awesome. Yeah. And last question for you before we wrap this up. Grace, what's next for Click Management?
Oh gosh, I've just told you how I don't have a business plan. No, I think we've got a fair bit on the horizon for this year. Actually, I think for us, it's everything I think about. I try to think about like the guiding principles with which I want to run Click, and that's being able to provide the most opportunities for the best talent that we represent. Being able to create really great digital content, being able to expand what the gaming industry is doing, and and learn as much as possible in the process. So I think they're the sorts of things that I think about. So hopefully, working on some more really cool projects.
Awesome. Grace, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was great listening to you,
Thank you.
We'll be following your progress.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was really fun.
Thanks, Grace. That's awesome.
Awesome.
I think that wraps it up.